give us a situation in the business community. Godwin Emefiele was suspended yesterday. And of course, we also heard that he has been arrested. What are you hearing? What's the mindsets of those in the business community, especially the stock exchange?
Emefiele assumed office as CBN governor in 2014 during the Buhari administration, during the Goodluck Jonathan administration, I beg your pardon. And when the Buhari administration came into office in 2015, that government retained Emefiele as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And during his first tenure as the CBN governor, introduced quite a number of reforms, particularly to stem the tide of the free fall of the naira against the dollar. It was during his first term as CBN governor we saw the naira fall to an all-time high of 350 naira to a dollar. And at that point, there were calls that he should devalue, but instead he started pumping forex into the foreign exchange market to strengthen the naira against the dollar. And it was during his first term as CBN governor that he introduced some interventions into the real sector of the Nigerian economy. That was when he introduced the Anchor Borrowers Program and some other reforms that he did during his term as the CBN governor. And he also maintained a tight monetary policy stance. There was a time during his first term as governor that he retained the monetary policy rate at 14%. And at the end of his tenure in 2019, there were suggestions that he should be allowed to do a second term. I'd like to say it here that in the history of the CBN, since Nigeria returned to democratic rule in 1999, no governor has done a second term in the CBN. We had Governor Joseph Sanusi was governor during the term of President Olusegun Obasanjo. He finished his term and it wasn't renewed. We saw Professor Chukwuma Soludo who did his term and it wasn't renewed. And Emir Lamido Sanusi, who also did his term, but he was suspended towards the tail end of his tenure. So the former governor Emefiele would be the first governor who would have his term renewed as governor. And I remember when he came in for his second time, he launched a roadmap to start his second term in office. He said he would put more money into the real sector to drive growth. And that was basically to ensure that Nigeria was more productive because there was so much demand for the dollar, which was one of the reasons why the dollar was falling, the naira was falling so much against the dollar. And the Anchor Borrowers Program, which introduced, saw quite a measure of success. And they also still continued to introduce other reforms to ensure that the naira is strengthened against the dollar. He also introduced the I&E window. We saw an RT 200 forex repatriation initiative amongst other initiatives that the governor introduced. The calls for his removal from office actually started when he ventured into some kind of politics last year. There were reports that he was trying to vie for the presidential position. And at that point, a lot of people felt that was in contravention of the CBN Act. And there were calls for his removal at that point. But at some point, that stopped. And towards the end of the year, he introduced a naira redesign policy that was supposed to bring in the currency out there. He said we had so much money in circulation that we're outside of the banking sector's vaults, and he wanted that to be brought into the banking system. And he also introduced new currencies, new designs for higher denomination currencies, talking about the 200, the 500, and the 1,000 naira note. And Nigerians didn't have a choice. Within a time frame, they had to take their monies back to deposit them into the banks. And unfortunately, they weren't getting those monies back. And that created some kind of, I would say, some kind of discomfort within the space. Eventually, that was resolved. There was a Supreme Court ruling, and that was eventually resolved. But I guess a lot of Nigerians didn't recover from that incident, and there were also calls for his removal at that point. And during the president's inauguration speech, he made mention of the fact that interest rates were rather high, and that we also needed to have a unified exchange rate regime, and that the monetary policy space would be cleaned. And he also said that the naira redesign policy would be reviewed. And that was what we heard. Shortly after that, we saw subsidy being removed, and that led us to what we heard yesterday night, that the governor has now been replaced by the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
So amongst all of these policies, let's look at the naira redesign. it was one that a lot of Nigerians were really not happy about because you have money in your bank account, but you cannot collect it because uh, there was a maximum limit to which you can withdraw. And just tell us now, from your own point of view, how did this affect businesses, especially small businesses?
Okay, the Naira redesign policy definitely affected so many businesses across Nigeria. We saw situations where small-scale business owners, we saw market women that had commodities to sell, but because people did not have the money to buy, some of these commodities, for example, that were highly perishable. I remember I once saw a video of somebody of a market in Lagos where it was a major hub for wholesale of plantains.
Mm.
And because the money wasn't there for people to buy these plantains, and the market women did not want they didn't want people to make transfers to them, because fact is that when the CBN did a lot as regards financial inclusion in Nigeria, trying to get the country's banked population into a banking net, a lot of people are still unbanked. A lot of people that do small businesses are still unbanked, and I would say that even though they are in the informal sector of the economy, they are quite a number. So they had issues during the introduction of the Naira redesign policy. Some of them did not even have bank accounts, and they insisted that they did not want people to transfer to them. And a lot of their commodities got spoiled. They weren't making sales. It wasn't a very pleasant experience, I would say. And some Nigerians still say, even up till now, even though there is money in circulation, they say they have not fully recovered from that experience, and they do not. It's something they do not want to go through ever again.
Well, no one wants to go through in that kind of situation ever again because a lot of people a lot of businesses were put in jeopardy, and of course, a lot of people suffered this situation. But looking at this now, um, what's next? Now we have an acting CBN governor. What's next for him?
Okay, so we have a new acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Is somebody that has been within the system. His name is Folashodu Shonubi. And before he got into the CBN in 2018, he was the managing director of the Nigerian Interbank system, Nigerian Interbank settlement system.
Yeah.
And he has quite an extensive experience in the financial sector, I must say. He has been in the financial system for as far back as 1990. He has worked in several banks in managerial positions. He has worked with Union Bank, Ecobank, FCMB, Citibank, and a host of some other banks where he has worked in managerial positions. And the focus would be definitely two major issues that confront the central bank and two major issues that the CBN governor had at the top of his agenda during his term before he was suspended was, of course, the foreign exchange rate, stabilizing the naira. Again, it's not just the greenback, which is the dollar, but other major currencies as well, talking about the euro and the pounds, and also the issue of the lending rates. Of course, the Apex Bank at its last meeting last month brought up the rates to 18.5%. The governor said they had to take on an aggressive monetary policy stance to rein in on inflation. He said inflation should be worse than it was at the moment, save for his interventions in the markets. That is stabilizing the inflation by way of tightening key lending rates. So the issue of key lending rates will be a top focus of the acting governor and talking about the forex rate regime. But we had the president during his inauguration speech saying that there need to be some changes in the country's monetary space. The president particularly mentioned that the Naira redesign policy would be reviewed. He said that interest rates are too high right now and it was discouraging investments, and it needs to be brought down to encourage more investments into the Nigerian economic space. And the president also said that we need to have a unified rate regime. Yep. And I must say here that shortly after the president made the statement about the unified rate regime, there was a story in the news where one of our major medium in the country said that the naira had been devalued in the I&E window, that's the investors and exporters window of the foreign exchange market, to the tune of about 630 naira to a dollar. It said that some of those who had tried to get the forex on the day that story was broken had got it at that price, but the CBN had come out to refute that allegation, saying it was fake news, even though that medium stood by what it said. So the president has said that we need to have a unified rate. We will no more have a situation where we have an official exchange rate, which is where those who need the dollar, for example, for some really important reasons. For example, if you want to go to school abroad, we now have a system in Nigeria where so many Nigerians are traveling abroad for school and relocating and some other migration purposes. If you need the dollar legitimately for example, for school, you could get it in the banks at an
All right.
official rate, which is far less than what you have in the parallel market. And we also have those who have health issues, who probably have to travel abroad to get some kind of healthcare abroad. It's considered
Okay.
as urgent, and those ones are also given privileges to get forex from Nigerian banks at official rates, and for some other reasons, and for BTA too, for basic travel allowance. But those going for healthcare and going to school are given more priority than those who need the forex for BTA. Those are those that get it from the official market. And for any other person that needs
All
the
right.
dollar urgently, aside those that have to go to the INE window, they have to go to the parallel market. So the president has said that there needs to be a unified rate, and we're expecting the acting CBN governor to work in line with what the president has said, to take monetary policy initiatives
All right.
in line with what the president has said as regards the country's monetary state.
All right, business correspondent, thank you very much, Lara Afolayan, for talking to us on this. Of course, we will get some more updates in the course of our bulletins. Thank you very much.